Good morning. Today we start the Roaring Twenties. Be sure you have your handout, as there will be questions that you'll need to answer as you go. Then you're going to go back and type those in and send them to me as a Word document. Thank you. Okay, the essential question for today: how did the United States war experience with the Spanish flu pandemic create the frivolous attitudes of the 1920s? Hopefully by the end of reading the article I sent you yesterday and going through the slides for the next 2 days will also answer that question. So you can hold before you submit until you have a really good answer here. Thank you. The Roaring Twenties. The 1920s, a decade of a booming economy and a major cultural shift, driven by horrific memories of World War I and a desire to forget. Pre-war to the 1919s, isolationism, anti-immigrant, and anti-immigration, the Red Scare, the rise of communism in 1917, laissez-faire or hands-off, no regulation as to economics, Prohibition in 1919, and fundamentalism. In the 1920s, you see modernism, fads and fashion, boom economy, jobs, 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 consumerism, lots of choices, buying on time, the flappers, the lost generation, the Harlem Renaissance, jazz, and the trial of the century, the Scopes monkey trial. World War I and the Spanish flu. The United States mobilized over 4 million men. Killed in action was close to 117,000. Wounded was 364,800. The total loss in the war worldwide was 10 million military, 9 million civilians. The Spanish flu of 1918 infected an estimated 500 million worldwide. Deaths were estimated between 20 and 40 million worldwide. Mortality rate estimates were between 10 and 20%. According to the United States Department of Health Human Services, America's totals was 28% of our population of 105 million were infected. That is between anywhere from 500,000 to 675,000 that died. The reason we don't know the exact figures is statistics were not kept like they are today. What we do know is that war and disease are horrific, sad, depressing. Let's forget the past, forget growing up. Let's just have fun. The Roaring Twenties. America shuts itself off from the world. We return to isolationism. We condemn un-American activities. We slam shut the immigration gate. We turn instead to focus on homegrown prosperity, the booming 1920s, an increase in real income and a standard of living, fear of the past in World War I, new consumerism, buying on time, new technology and entertainment, and then the hidden dangers that await America's future. President Warren G. Harding, quote, "America's present need is not heroics, but healing, not nostrums, but normalcy, not revolution, but restoration." Warren G. Harding. Define nostrum, define normalcy. And here's what I'm going to have you do. I want you to substitute a new meaning in here for these words. Then I want you to rewrite the quote on your handout. Restate it, substituting these two words for something that you understand. Traditional values. The definition of traditional values before 1920 was a movement or attitude stressing strict and liberal obedience to a set of basic principles. The definition in the 1920s was a movement that holds to a strict belief that the Bible is the inerrant word of God. A fundamentalist during the 1920s felt they had a duty to make life better by example and law. Roaring Twenties challenges. The following slides are going to highlight Prohibition 1919, the Scopes trial in 1925, Red Scare in 1917, Nativism, the term first used in 1844 and what it means in 1920, the Ku Klux Klan, also known as the KKK, organized in 1865, Prohibition, the 18th Amendment, sometimes called the Noble Experiment. Supporters were fundamentalists and progressives. They believed that prohibition would improve individual health, strengthen families, less divorce, stop diseases like alcoholism, and improve work performance. Those that were against prohibition felt it caused law-abiding Americans to break the law. They didn't want to stop drinking. Increased organized crime, violence, and corruption. Sometimes homemade brews were dangerous and killed people. Prohibition was repealed in 1933 with the 21st Amendment. John Thomas Scopes versus the state of Tennessee in 1925. John Thomas Scopes was a high school football coach and substitute teacher. The American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, advertised that they would pay the legal fees of any teacher who would violate the Tennessee Butler Act, a law that made the teaching of evolution illegal. Town leaders conspired with Scopes to bring the case to their town. The publicity would bring much-needed revenues to the sleepy town of Dayton, Tennessee. Clarence Darrow was paid by the ACLU to defend John Scopes. William Jennings Bryant volunteered to assist the prosecution. The Scopes trial, aka Monkey Trial aftermath. John Scopes was found guilty and fined $100. Appeals to the Tennessee Supreme Court found the Butler law was constitutional, but the judge threw out the verdict and vacated the fine, citing it was improper for the judge to have set the fine and not the jury. John Scopes later admitted that he never actually taught evolution and that the lawyers for his defense coached the students on what to say. The major issue of the Scopes trial was the tension between the fundamentalist believers and the secularists. Charles Darwin's book, Origin of the Species, had claimed that all life evolved or developed from simpler forms over a long period of time. How belief that man evolved from monkeys is undetermined. This trial quickly became a fight between Christian belief that the Bible is inerrant and science. The law remained in place in Tennessee until 1967. Faith plus science equals God the Creator. Darrow tried to use science to cast doubt on Bryan's belief, but Bryan firmly stated, "I accept the Bible absolutely." One can ask the question, why is it that modern science arose in the Christian culture of Western Europe, rather than ancient Egypt, Greece, China, or Middle East? Though non-Christian societies made important contributions to mathematics and astronomy, none of those societies produced anything remotely like modern science. In an article by Robert Fay, August 2007, for the C.S. Lewis Foundation, demonstrates that biblical truth and science were created by the same creator. He states, number 1, the universe is good and is a good thing to know about. If matter is bad, science won't be inclined to investigate it. Scientists of the 17th century believed the material world to be good because they knew God had made it good. Genesis 1 states, God saw all that he made and it was very good. Genesis 1:31. Number 2, the universe is regular, orderly, and rational. If people believe that material behavior lacks order, they won't bother to study it. The founders of modern science believed that the universe is regular, orderly, and rational. Because our Father is personal, rational, and faithful, for by him all things are created, in heaven and earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Colossians 1:16-17. Nativists insist, no more immigrants. The Emergency Quota Act was a movement that limited the number of immigrants each year that immigrated to the United States. All of these topics affected politics in the 1920s, especially the quota system. This favored all Western Europeans and created a decline in immigration to the United States. Post-war anti-German attitudes led to some Americans not allowing German music to be played, and German Americans refrained from speaking German in public. KKK and the Red Scare. Reorganized in 1915, the Klan continued to promote hatred toward African Americans and now added new targets: Jews, Catholics, immigrants, labor unions. They opposed labor unions because they attracted immigrants. They claimed to stand against law-breaking and immorality. They grew to a membership peak of 4 to 5 million in the mid-1900s. They terrorized unworthy citizens at night. They preached hate, wore white sheets with their faces covered, and cloaked it all in religion. They supported theories of a pure race as founded in the eugenics movement. The Red Scare. In 1917, Vladimir Lenin helped to lead a revolution in Tsarist Russia. They pulled out of World War I and overhauled the government and set up the communist totalitarian country of Soviet Russia. The Tsar Nicholas II and his entire family were assassinated by the Soviets. The country was locked down and people were not free to leave. The Soviets forced people to accept this new government with severe punishments for those who opposed them. The fear of suspected anarchists and communists living and plotting in America gave birth to the Red Scare movement. Criminal activities from these radicals fueled this fear. Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer discovered a bomb mailed to his office, which gave birth to the Palmer raids, where arrest of the guilty also included some innocent citizens in its zeal to keep the Red Scare away. Some of the efforts to stop the Red Scare trampled on people's civil rights and liberties. Groups like the ACLU defended those arrested in these raids.